Good day, boys and girls. Today we're going to be showing you how to make a simple fruit fool. Now I'm going to upload this video in anticipation of the Valentine's Day rush. Yes, that's where you come along and say, oh crap, I'm going to make some sort of dessert and I don't know what to do. Well, this is going to be the dessert for you because it is very simple. You do not need to make it in advance and it does not require any advanced cooking techniques. So the fruit fool we're going to be making today is made out of melons. Now you may be wondering the origins of the word fool. Well, no one really knows for sure. What a fool is basically is an English dessert that is served chilled. It is an unset cream, so it's basically just whipped cream and fruit puree, which we're going to show you how to do today. Now the ingredients you're going to need, if you're going to be making the same thing as me, is melon of some description. Now I have enough melon here to make approximately 250 ml of puree, if it all goes according to plan. You also need some icing sugar in which to sweeten the dessert, especially important if you're using berries because the flavor may or may not be sweet enough to your liking. What you need here is whipped cream, and if you're feeling a little fancy, some good quality pure vanilla extract. Make sure to use the extract and not the cheaper imitations or essences. So what we're going to do now is basically just chop up the fruit and we're going to throw it in the blender in order to make a puree out of it. Now it's not so important how big the fruit is when it goes into the machine. Of course you're going to be want to cut it up a bit just so that it'll make the blending process that much easier. So just pop it in the blender, like so. If I were a network show, I might have an assistant to help me do this, and I'd be able to show you the finished product, but I'm not. I'm very indie. And there you go. Fruit puree. Now if you're using some kind of berries or fruit that might have fibers, you want to be passing this through a fine mesh sieve in order to strain any impurities that you might have blended into the fruit puree, since you don't want that in your fool. Once again, if I were a network show, I'd be able to just put this aside and not show you the process of sieving it, and I'd magically pull out the finished item from a fridge under my counter. But as it is, I'm not a network program. So you're going to have to watch me do all this in real time. How about that, folks? Or folk, depending on how many people this video gets to. Make sure to scrape as much as you can off the bottom of the sieve, since you don't want to waste any of this precious fruit. Right, so now that you have your fruit puree here, what you want to do is taste it really quick so we know what kind of flavors we have going here today. Now that's quite good. I might just add 1 spoonful of icing sugar. Of course, you want to be using icing sugar because it readily dissolves in most liquids without the requirements of heat or constant agitation. That's about right. Now again, it is very much up to you as to how much sugar you want to put in your dessert. Of course, since this is a light fruit dessert based on whipped cream, you do not want it to be too sweet, otherwise it might be hard to take after a heavy meal that you might be preparing for Valentine's Day. Alright, now we'll just put this aside and I'll have some coffee. And I will now show you how to whip cream. Okay, so when it comes to whipping cream, there are a few techniques I'd like to share with you. First of all, try and chill your equipment before you whip the cream. Make sure it's spotlessly clean. Use a biggish bowl if you have one available. You can either use a whisk, either a standard whisk or a balloon whisk, or an electric whisk, of course, depending on your preference. If you are going to whip by hand, make sure to keep your elbow and your wrist close to your body. This will help reduce fatigue in the long run. And make sure to whisk quickly. You know, this isn't whisking, you're just stirring it. The idea of whisking is to incorporate air into the mixture, increasing its volume and making it all nice and fluffy. A balloon whisk would actually be better in this process because it's larger, so it will help in incorporating air. But because I'm just so pro, you know, this cream is whisking up pretty nice and quick. So now it's already at a stiff peak, which is quite good, and it'll do for our purposes today. Okay, this is already quite stiff. So now that you have the whipped cream and the fruit puree, we come to the almost final step. Now the fun part, folding. If you haven't done this before, it might take a little practice, but what you're doing is mixing the two ingredients in such a manner that the air that you've already beaten or whipped into the cream does not get deflated, so that your whipped cream stays nice and fluffy and whipped. Basically, the process involves carefully folding the mixture in the bowl into the puree so that the cream and the fruit puree mixes together but doesn't collapse. It's a very gentle motion. You're basically cutting the cream and scooping it round and coming back to cut it again. I don't know if you can see that properly or not, but it's just basically this sort of motion here. You're very gently mixing in the whipping cream into the puree. If you so desire, you could also use a large whisk for this. Just make sure to be very gentle and very delicate. Do your best to make sure that there are no lumps of cream left in the mixture. If necessary, use the back of your spoon and press it up against the side of the bowl in order to crush out any lumps you may find. Alright, that's all done. Now the very last step before I pour this into a glass is to add a few drops of vanilla extract. Or a thin stream, as it were. And again, very, very, very gently mix this into the mixture. Mix this into the mixture. Yeah, that'll work. But it's extremely important in this final step to make sure that the vanilla extract is thoroughly mixed into the cream. I don't know if you've tried vanilla extract on its own or not, but it is very strong and actually quite bitter. All its flavor comes from its aroma. Alright, now that that's done, you may have noticed that a brandy balloon has magically appeared on my table thanks to the magic of video editing. This is the glass that I will use to serve the fool in. If you have a funnel, it's best to bring it out. Alright, so this is basically it here. All we need to do now is stick it in the fridge. So now this has been sitting in the fridge for half an hour. It's chilled quite nicely. It's gotten thicker than it was before. It's not fully cream consistency, but it's quite thick. It definitely coats the spoon all around. So What you might choose to do is garnish this with some more melon, perhaps some red currants or some berries if you have any. Strawberries might also work. Avoid nuts or chocolate. Mint leaves also work as well. They're a classic finish. Avoid ice cream or any other dairy product, because that will just drown out the taste of the melon fool. So, good luck. Happy hunting. When you're whipping cream, make sure not to over whip it. You'll know you've over whipped your cream if you end up with a lump of butter in your bowl, because that's basically what it is, butter. You don't want your cream too soft. Before you come to the stage that I reached, you get to the soft peak stage, and you'll know it's the soft peak stage by pulling the whisk out of the cream, and you'll see a small peak of cream left in a bowl. If that peak stands up straight, it's coming up to stiff peak. If it falls back down on itself, it's only in the soft peak stage. You want to do it all the way up to the stiff peak stage, but not so much that it becomes butter. Remember that the vanilla is an optional ingredient. You do not need to use it. If you don't, you won't be missing out on too much. All it does is add an extra dimension of flavor to your dessert.